Two fake HOA cops tried to drag my daughter off my own porch, shouting about arrest authority, like it meant something. They assumed I was just some frail old man hiding out in the woods. They figured I'd plead, panic, maybe freeze. What they didn't know was that the man stepping out of the darkness behind them wasn't just a homeowner. He was a retired commander from a U.S. Marshal Fugitive Task Force. And that morning, they chose the wrong house. The main story begins on what should have been a quiet Tuesday morning. I had just poured myself a second cup of plain black coffee. My cabin rests on 40 acres of rough land pressed up against a national forest. This place was my refuge. Out here, the soundtrack was supposed to be wind through pine needles and the distant bugle of an elk. On paper, I was retired. After 3 decades hunting the country's most dangerous fugitives for the Marshal Service, I was finished with chaos, finished with bloodshed. All I wanted was calm. My daughter, Sarah, had driven up from the city to stay for a week. Law school finals had wrung her dry, and she needed air, space, quiet. She sat on the lowest porch step, phone in hand, scrolling lazily and soaking in the mountain breeze. Then the quiet shattered. Tires crunched sharply on gravel. A black SUV, far too spotless for roads like these, swung into my long driveway. It rolled fast, arrogant, throwing dust everywhere, and stopped far too close to porch. Every instinct I'd honed from decades of warrants and forced entries went on full alert. Something was wrong. 2 men climbed out. They wore dark blue tactical uniforms that still looked factory new. Their belts sagged under flashlights, batons, zip ties. Baseball caps sat low on their heads, embroidered with HOA Patrol in bright gold block letters. I stayed inside the screen door's shadow, coffee mug still warm in my hand, watching and measuring. There was no HOA here. We were miles beyond any incorporated township. These men weren't deputies or state troopers. Their uniforms didn't fit right. Too many patches. Vests hanging sloppy. Back in the day, we called guys like this tactical tourists. And when you hand a weak man a badge and inflate his ego, you get a dangerous combination. The taller one strode straight toward Sarah. No introduction. No questions. Just orders. You are trespassing on community-managed preservation land. Ma'am, present identification immediately. Sarah didn't blink. She lowered her phone and peered at him over her sunglasses. Excuse me? This is my father's property. We've held the deed for 20 years. Who exactly are you? The second man stepped in. Shorter, heavier, his face already flushed with forced anger. He flicked a plastic badge clipped to his belt. Homeowners Association Enforcement Unit. You're violating Bylaw 7, see regarding unauthorized loitering and squatting. Vacate the premises now, or you will be forcibly removed. It was pure nonsense. Intimidation trash aimed at people who didn't know better. Bullies, nothing more. Probably running a scam on tourists and rentals nearby. They thought they'd found an easy mark. Sarah stood, brushing dust from her jeans. You got 5 seconds to get back in your vehicle and leave before I call the actual sheriff. That's when they crossed the line. The tall one lunged and seized Sarah's arm. Hard. She cried out and yanked back. Listen to me, little lady, he snarled, his voice dropping low and ugly. You're coming with us until we sort this out. We have arrest authority in this district. The instant his hand touched my daughter, the world iced over. The peaceful retiree disappeared. The old man with coffee was gone. The commander was back. I placed my mug on the railing slowly, silently. They were too focused on wrestling a 120-pound girl to notice the 6'4" shadow moving inside the cabin. I didn't shout. I didn't rush. I reached for my tools. Just inside the doorway leaned my retirement gift, a custom-built tactical rifle chambered in .308, kept ready for bears, mountain lions, or predators of another sort. I wrapped my hand around the grip and racked the charging handle. Clack, clack. The sound sliced through the mountain air like a whip. Every cop and every criminal knows that sound. Both men froze. Their heads snapped toward the dark doorway. I stepped onto the porch. The rifle was tight against my shoulder, muzzle angled low, but ready to rise in a heartbeat. I loomed above them from the top step. The tall one dropped. Sarah's arm like it was white-hot metal. His mouth fell open, shock wiping bravado right off his face. The shorter one reacted on instinct, his hand drifting toward his belt, hovering over what looked like a taser or maybe a baton. I stared straight through them. I watched the swagger drain away, replaced by the raw, animal fear of men who suddenly realized they've awakened something that should have been left alone. My voice stayed even, controlled, carrying the weight of 1,000 warrants served. Get your hands off her. Now. The air felt charged, like a storm about to break. The tall man obeyed first. He slowly raised his hands, skin gone gray, eyes locked on the muzzle of my rifle. But the shorter one, the one fueled by ego instead of sense, wasn't scared yet. He was angry. "Are you insane?" he shouted, voice cracking. "Drop the weapon. You're assaulting a uniformed officer. I'll have a SWAT team here in 10 minutes. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I stepped down one stair. The wood creaked beneath my boot. "You're not an officer," I said quietly. "And that's not a uniform. It's a costume. Right now, you're committing felony trespass and assault on federal property." The tall man glanced at his partner. "Mike, shut up," he hissed. He'd noticed it. The stance, the grip, finger index not on the trigger, stock locked in, elbows tight. He finally understood. This wasn't a frightened homeowner with a shaky shotgun. This was training. This was instinct burned into muscle. We can talk about this," the tall one stammered, backing up half a step. "We just need to verify land permits. If you just put the gun down." "Sarah," I said, never breaking eye contact. "Call Sheriff Miller. Tell him I have 2 suspects detained for impersonating law enforcement and attempted kidnapping." The short man's eyes went wide. "Kidnapping? We're enforcing bylaws." He reached for his belt again. Click. I shifted the muzzle barely an inch. "Don't." I warned. "If your hand touches that belt again, you won't like how this ends." He froze. "On your knees," I ordered. "Now, hands interlaced behind your heads." The tall one dropped immediately. He knew compliance when he saw it. His knees hit dirt, dust puffing up, fingers locking behind his head. The short one hesitated. He glanced at the SUV, then at me, measuring distance, calculating escape. "Don't," I said calmly. "You can't outrun a .308, and you definitely can't outrun the radio." Slowly, reluctantly, he sank to his knees beside his partner. I held him there for 12 minutes. 12 long, silent minutes under the open sky. My arms never shook. My aim never drifted. Sarah stood behind me, safe, recording everything on her phone. Then the wail of sirens cut through the valley. Real sirens, not cheap aftermarket noise. 3 county cruisers tore up the drive, lights flashing, dust billowing. Sheriff Miller led the charge. He stepped out, hand on his holster, then relaxed when he saw me. He waved his deputies forward. "Jim," he called, shaking my hand. "Haven't seen you bring out the heavy hardware since the cartel bust in '09. What's going on?" "Tried to grab Sarah," I said, nodding toward the kneeling pair. "Claimed they were HOA police." "You know I don't have an HOA, Bob." Miller's expression hardened. He turned to them. "You boys are a long way from the suburbs." The deputies pulled them up. The fake confidence was gone. The short one was crying when the real cuff snapped shut, cold steel biting into his wrists. "But he pointed a gun at us," he wailed as they shoved him toward a cruiser. "He said he was a marshal." Sheriff Miller paused, looked at him, then looked back at me with a grin. "He didn't say he was a marshal," Miller said. "He is the marshal. You just tried to muscle the retired commander of the fugitive task force. You're lucky you're going to jail. If I hadn't shown up, you might be headed to the morgue." As they were stuffed into the back seats, the tall one met my eyes through the glass. I saw it then, understanding. Regret. I safed the rifle and slung it over my shoulder. Sarah hugged me tight. "You okay?" I asked. "I am now," she said. I watched the dust settle as the convoy disappeared down the drive, hauling the trash away. They thought an online badge gave them power. They forgot real power doesn't come from uniforms. It comes from protecting what's yours. I picked up my coffee mug. Cold. I drank it anyway. The mountain went quiet again, better than before. They picked the wrong house, and they paid for it. Don't miss the next showdown. Subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next.